Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about whether this GIVI tank bag could be as good or better than the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag. What is good about it, what isn't so good about it, and whether it should be something that you should consider for your choice of a waterproof tank bag that doesn't break the bank. Stay tuned. Now, I was looking for a tank bag for my V-Strom, which, as I'm sure you know, is an adventure-oriented bike. So, number one thing that I was looking for in a tank bag is that it absolutely had to be waterproof. So this thing is waterproof. I really like Mosko Moto as a company. I use their 40-liter duffel bag for all of my trips. I think they make great products, and for that reason I was really interested in getting their hood tank bag. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag is a fully waterproof tank bag which has one clip similar to this one. You clip this open, lift it up, and straight away you're greeted by a big hole and you're right into the tank bag. There's no zips. That's it, just one clip here. It opens up and you're into your tank bag. I really liked the ease of that, you know, motorcycle gloves, not messing around with zippers. I loved that it was waterproof and it wasn't too big. I'm not a big fan of the enormous tank bags that look like they're the size of a backpack. I wanted something that was relatively small, and the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag seemed to fit that bill. Now, I am in Canada, and one of the issues I encountered was getting that Mosko Moto Hood bag. One, I think they're quite a popular company, so I think they had a lot of people who were trying to order, and then also, so that's to say it was out of stock often, and they also only have two distribution centers. One is in Europe, one is in the States, and with me being in Canada, if I was to order from either locations, I would get dinged with Canadian taxes and likely some form of customs and import fees. So that led me to looking to alternatives, and that is what led me to this GIVI tank bag. As I said earlier, importantly, it is 100% waterproof, and it has very similar features to the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag, which I'm going to jump right into. Now, first and foremost, this is not a magnetic tank bag. As you can see, it straps onto the bike. It's got one strap on either side at the back, and it's got one strap at the front side. One thing to note with this tank bag is, because of the way this works, you want to make sure on your motorcycle that you have somewhere where you can easily loop this strap through without it interfering with your handlebars. This is one of the few things that I've had an issue with on this bike, on this tank bag, sorry, is sometimes it can be a little bit finicky to find an area to get this through, especially if you're perhaps going on a trip somewhere and maybe at the end of each night you're taking this off, because the strap cannot stay on the bike and it cannot be detached from the tank bag. So if I want to take this tank bag into my tent or a hotel or somewhere else for the night, when I unclip this, this is one piece, so I can't unclip anything here. So this strap is attached to the bag and must come with me, which means I am looping it out from where I loop it, and the next day when I want to put this back on, I have to loop it back through. I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell. I tried a few different configurations, but I actually have on the V-Strom this gap I'm not sure if you can see it. I'll stick my finger through, right through this little piece of the, it's almost like a brace that comes out of the frame that a lot of the front unit mounts onto. It's this metal thing with a gap. And it actually proves to be a pretty nice little gap to feed this strap through, because it keeps it away from the turning of the forks and the steering column. So that's one of the few things that I don't like about this tank bag, but that's quite minor. The other straps work like this, clip, buckle there and there, and it's just a loop at the other end. So that's something important that you have to keep in mind as well. Your bike has to have somewhere around the knee area that you can loop a strap through, because that's how the straps work. You simply loop it through somewhere, feed it through, and cinch it down. That varies with different tank bags. Many tank bag suppliers, manufacturers have some sort of strap system that stays on the bike, and you can either somehow either stick it or mount it onto your bike, and it has a little Velcro, or sorry, a buckle that you clip onto from the tank bag. But this one's a little bit different. So you can see where I go through. I would also add that I think there's pros and cons to this strap system. It's really nice that you don't have to mess around with hooking up and zip tying a permanent clip receiver onto your bike somewhere. It's nice that you can just throw a strap on, and if you want to take everything off, you just undo the strap and it's gone. Another thing that I often do is I'll leave these straps on. You know, if I want to take my tank bag in somewhere for the night, I don't really care about the straps. I unhook them and just leave them like that and take the tank bag in. The only annoying one is I have to take in the front strap. One other final note on that is be wary of how far down you might have to go to attach the strap on your bike. It looks like these straps would give you, that looks like something close to about 2 feet to me. And you can see on my V-Strom, I actually use most of that strap, the bit that I connect it to, and you can see there's nowhere else really further up the bike that would work. This is really the first accessible point to loop that strap around. And I'm close. You'll see when I pull my strap out, when I tighten it, I mean. I'm close to the limit of the strap length, really. I mean, I don't have, if it was much further down, I wouldn't have too much strap left. Now, I would imagine most bikes wouldn't be more than that distance, but perhaps if it's a bit of a weird situation on your bike and you don't have too many accessible points, that might be something to keep in mind. When I cinch down all of the straps nice and firm, the base of this is pretty solid. There's a little bit of movement at the top, but it is solid down here, which is really nice. When I sit as I ride, if I look down, there's a significant gap between me and the tank bag, which is nice. It's not getting anywhere close to my body. If you look at my phone as well, a consideration for some of you on different bikes, if you have a similar phone mount perhaps, given the extra height that this adds on top of your gas tank, when I turn my handlebars all the way, I have to adjust my phone mount a little bit to make sure that it's in a position that it doesn't catch the tank bag here. If this was a little bit lower, it catches here when I fully crank the handlebars. Now this gives, so it wouldn't cause any issues, but I like to make sure it's clear of the entire handlebar travel. You wouldn't want that to catch on the bike as you're making a hard turn in a parking lot or something and perhaps spook you. Another thing to keep in mind when you're looking at buying a tank bag is what you have to do in order to fuel your bike up with a tank bag on. It's a consideration that I think is easily forgotten, and of course that's assuming that you have the more standard fuel tank location that's kind of right in front of you on the bike, which this V-Strom is. What I found works with this tank bag: unhook both of these buckles. I like to leave that front strap connected as much as possible because that's the only one that's a little bit finicky and annoying if you get it unlooped. I swing the tank bag to one side, I fuel up, and then I swing it back. Loosen these out a bit to give it a bit of length and connect it back. Simple. Okay, now let's get into this thing. Now, very similar to the Mosko Moto tank bag, like I said, it has this front buckle to get into the bag. So you lift that. Now here's the difference versus the Mosko Moto. Unlike the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag, which once you lift this hood, you're just looking at a big opening and you're into your tank bag, this GIVI tank bag has an extra layer, I guess, that you have to open to get into. I think this can be viewed as a positive or a negative. It's a negative in the sense that it takes one extra step to get into it. I think it's a positive because when it comes to waterproofing and things like that, I guess it adds one extra little layer of protection from water and whatnot. And there's one other thing that makes a difference for, which I will get to shortly. But you can see there's two pull tabs to get into this tank bag. They give you these nice little slightly larger things to pull on, which is, I found, pretty easy with gloves on. And open it up, and there's your tank bag. Now if I move out some of my belongings, you can see it's pretty basic in here. They've got these little things on the side for kind of sliding little stuff in to hold it, but apart from that, there aren't any internal zipper pockets or anything else. It's just a big open area. The yellow makes it a little bit easier to see certain things, so it's not completely black, so you don't have a bunch of dark stuff and it's hard to see. So the yellow is a little bit nice. And it happens to match my V-Strom quite well, which is nice. Now, as I said, there's one other thing that having this extra layer adds for this tank bag, which I think is a benefit versus the Mosko Moto. If you ever have something, if you've been riding and let's say it's been raining and you have soaking wet gloves and you're switching to another pair of gloves, or anything else perhaps that is quite wet, which you wouldn't like to stuff in next to all of your other contents, having this extra layer means you can actually stuff or put some wet gloves, for example, right here, close the lid. Let me grab my gloves just to show how that looks. So if you stuff, let's say these gloves were soaking wet and I'm switching to waterproof gloves, if I stuff those there and close this up and cinch it down, those gloves won't go anywhere and they won't get any of your other contents that are inside the tank bag wet, which is quite nice. So I thought I would show that. Another little thing which I think this tank bag does better than the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag is when it comes to anyone that likes to use their tank bag as a place to hold paper maps or phones or something else that they want to look at and navigate with while riding. The Mosko Moto tank bag has a waterproof, kind of like a little sleeve that you can attach to the top via MOLLE connections, I believe. This thing has a bit of an internal sleeve built into its roof. So if I pull up my phone, let's say that I was using this to navigate with, I can slide this up in there, and my phone sits in there quite nicely without having to add or remove anything, which I personally don't use this. If I did ever use this, I believe I would like this better than the Mosko Moto option, where you don't have to have or add anything on top. You can just slide something in there when needed. It might be a little bit smaller, perhaps, with a smaller opening than the Mosko Moto sleeve. So perhaps if you're using large paper maps, it might be a bit hard to get that in. But I thought I would show you that. The other thing that I really liked about this particular tank bag is the size. It's right in that medium size range that I think is perfect, and it's exactly what I was looking for. As I said earlier, it's not one of those enormous tank bags that is like a complicated backpack that has 17 different slots and pockets. I want something nice and easy. I want something where I can hold certain things that I use quite often, like especially when I'm on trips, like a phone, like a disc lock brake, like a wallet. I use earplugs, a balaclava if it's cold. So it's the perfect size where it's not this enormous thing, but it's not a tiny little tank bag. It's, for me, right around the perfect size. It doesn't get in my way when I'm sitting and riding and standing up doing adventure riding. So for me, it was a perfect size. You can see it says on the side here 6 liters. Now this is actually something that's really important. For whatever reason, when I was looking at buying this and doing my own research, tons of different retailers advertise this particular bag in the title and in the description as a 10-liter bag. But if you look at the photos of the product, you can see just in some of the photos that it shows this 6 liters. And I confirmed with the retailer that I bought it from that it was indeed 6 liters. So keep that in mind. It's almost like somewhere along the way, it's almost like GIVI perhaps included some wrong information in the information that they send to all of the retailers. And I'm sure there are people that have purchased this thinking it was 10 liters, or didn't purchase it thinking it was 10 liters. So keep that in mind. Another really important consideration, especially if you're looking at this as an alternative perhaps to the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag, is the price. This thing was much cheaper than the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag, especially for me in Canada, when I had to factor in the extra taxes and customs that I would have had to pay when importing the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag. This thing, all in all, probably came out to less than half of what I would have had to have paid for the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag. I don't know off the top of my head. Maybe I'll add something onto the screen now for exactly what this cost, but I believe it was around the 150 Canadian dollar range, which is probably something around 120, 110 US dollars currently. But yes, I believe it was around 150 Canadian, give or take a little bit. So when I factor that in, I think this is it's a great tank bag by itself, but I think it's also a fantastic alternative to the Mosko Moto Hood tank bag. So if you're looking into the Mosko Moto, you're unsure if it's worth paying that money, which I would add that I'm sure it probably is worth the money. But for me personally, with it being sold out all the time, and with it hard to come by in Canada, comparing it to the cost of this and how good this still is, for me, I think I made a great choice, and I've been really happy with it. So yeah, I recommend this tank bag. It's done me great. I I haven't actually been caught in too many rainstorms. Funnily enough, one of the first times I was caught in any sort of precipitation, and it was actually in a bit of a snowstorm. And I have used it in rainy situations, and I haven't had any issues with leaking or waterproofness. So although it hasn't been tested for years and years and years in countless downpours, from my experience so far, it's definitely waterproof. And there's very little about it that I don't like. As I mentioned, the only thing might be, I wish that there was perhaps a way to have this strap be in a spot where I didn't have to unhook it and hook it back up every time I want to take the tank bag in. And that's one of the only things that I don't really like about this setup. Alright guys, there we have it. That's my review and my thoughts on the GIVI waterproof 6-liter tank bag. I think it's a great small to medium sized tank bag. There's very little I dislike about it. It's a great option, and importantly, it's a great cheaper option than the Mosko Moto tank bag, in my opinion. We're starting to lose the daylight here, so I think I am going to pack up and head out. But if you found this helpful, leave a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what you think about this tank bag. If you have one, what do you think about it? And if you don't have one, let me know if you have any questions, or why you might be considering this, and why you might be considering it as an option to that Mosko Moto tank bag. Alright guys, I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.